There seems to be a notable paradox in the very essence of the modern airport. On the one hand, it is a 24-hour-a-day setting for the most intense kinds of human activity. In that sense, an airport terminal ought to be considered an occurrence of a genuinely urban nature. Yet, this intense and inherently urban constellation of programs is almost certainly doomed to be detached from the city. It generates vast residue of unbuildable territory around it. Wherever a plane lands or takes off, the city literally ceases. Ben Gurion Airport is a typical example. Even with a recently inaugurated terminal, aviation officials forecast that in the near future it will top its passenger capacity of 16 million per year. Ben Gurion has effectively exhausted its ability to grow on the expanse of the Tel Aviv metropolitan area. The solution, then, will probably have to come in the form of an additional international airport, relieving Ben Gurion of some of its burden. For obvious reasons, the closer to the center it gets, the more sense there will be in realizing it. The closest thing meeting this particular requirement was a scheme that has circulated the corridors of various planning agencies for some 30 years. Yes, the one with the artificial island off Tel Aviv's shore. As overboard and audacious as it may sound, we actually liked it, thinking it might be a good starting point. To understand the nature of such an undertaking, we enlisted the aid of the Kansai International Airport in Osaka Bay, Japan, the quintessential forerunner of this particular genre, as a reference. A short analysis led to two conclusions. The first is that landfill technology is immensely expensive, severely harmful to the environment, and overall obsolete. Instead, it is possible today to use floating steel platforms with a runway on top, thus minimizing the negative effect on the marine ecosystem, and even turn wave motion into electricity. Secondly, a big airport cannot be located entirely at sea, and Kansai is no exception. Some of its supporting infrastructure and program are simply bound to be on land, occupying a generous chunk of it. The realization of that later conclusion, with Tel Aviv conditions in mind, took our planning strategy one step further. This meant placing as much of the entire terminal apparatus on land as possible, effectively dividing all of its functions along the dialectic framework of man versus airplane. This simple programmatic dissection can offer the terms to the drafting of quite a new type of airport terminal, a genuinely urban one, exploiting this condition of complete proximity to the city and acting as a densifying agent with its size to its advantage. Upon examination of the Tel Aviv coastline, where clearly a large infrastructure intervention can only be held north of the Yarkon estuary, a site is spotted to the southeast of the Reading power plant, situated directly behind it. The exact positioning of the runway relative to land is determined with accordance to the aircraft noise levels diagram. It allows to establish the shortest possible distance between the two within tolerable levels of noise. In many ways, it is an urban void. Because of its sheer size and unflattering proximity to the plant, it has repeatedly escaped any long-term planning resolutions and remains an unidentified and severely neglected zone. It is possible, then, that a radical intervention on a large scale, such as being proposed here, might work in these circumstances after all. The area around the site is expected to undergo a considerable development effort according to existing plans. This includes the Ibn Gvirol Road stretching northwards and the inauguration of the red tram line on it, the continuation of the port promenade along the Reading power plant in the same direction, and finally, the removal of the Dov airfield in favor of a large residential development. The terminal structure incorporates the existing infrastructures in defining its layout. Its principal concern is movement, be that of pedestrian, vehicular, or luggage. Movement forms its priorities and shapes its architecture. A circulation scheme is devised in accordance with four main principles. Accessibility. Pedestrian and bicycle accessibility and circulation are prioritized, a feature that basically sets the urban terminal apart from other types. Check-in. Luggage conveyor belt facilities are placed throughout the building, enabling to disperse efficiently the check-in activity at a number of entry areas within the complex. Descending circulation. The arrival and departure platforms are designed in a manner that allows the passenger to proceed on their way either horizontally or in descent. without their ever needing to reserve an ascension. Transportation axes. The arrival and departure platforms are linked vertically by the city tram line, crossing the building and the monorail that connects them to the airside terminal at sea. Tel Aviv's Port District is assuming a greater role in providing a setting for various leisure and commercial programs in recent times. This area bears certain embedded urban features that can be exploited and reinforced. We propose to do so by introducing similar programs, only in a much denser envelope on the other side of the Yarkon. A city terminal accommodates not only those who come to board on an airplane there, but also has a wider role, facilitating accessible public spaces. This strategy of large yet calculated infrastructure, orientated intervention into an urban void, can, in our minds, trigger the introduction of terms essential to sustaining urbanity. The result is a kind of orchestrated vortex of moving parts, structural elements, and envelopes that add up to a dense, low on excess, and, despite its evident enormity, a rather compact building.